Huh?
With the camera down, you look like a
Yeah.
ball,
Oh, shit.
bowling ball. Good morning, everyone. Here to talk about the ugly, the infamous, the terrible, the yuck stamp duty. Michael, let's talk about stamp duty.
Sorry.
When stamp duty? When is stamp duty due and paid?
So your audio, yeah. So stamp duty is due and payable upon settlement. Well, up and through. Hang on. Give me 1 sec. Can you hear me, Mark?
Yes, buddy. Can you hear me?
Oh, it's gone very faint. Let me add you through Insta. Give me 1 sec. Yeah. Do you want to just talk, Mark, about stamp duty, and I'll be in a sec?
Sure, buddy. So, guys, we want to have a bit of a chat with everyone about stamp duty. It's been around for a very, very long time. It's quite New South Wales. It's different in every state, but New South Wales is the highest out of all of the states. With New South Wales, what we're actually finding is that people are getting really uncomfortable because the prices have crept up so much. Everyone is paying the absolute maximum in their stamp duty. So, Michael, I'm going to come over to you now.
Yeah, so I'm just going on the Insta. It's just very faint. Is your headphones working? It's just very faint hearing you through the TV.
Nope, I can hear you spot on.
Okay. Going live. Good morning, Gal. Good morning, Rob. Jeff, sounds okay. So, yeah, it's just my sound hearing Mark, Jeff. That's what it is. But I should be able to hook up to you here through Instamark. Okay, I can hear you good now, Mark.
Hey, bud.
Okay, beautiful. Stamp duty. No one likes it. No one loves it. A lot of people, it's that sort of little extra cost where people are looking for, they're looking to buy a property of $900,000 and say $1 million, and stamp duty is about a $40,000, $45,000 consideration for the property as well. So it can really affect sort of the lending of the property, which people have to be aware about. But one of the biggest things Mark and I just realized this morning is the name changed. It's not even called stamp duty anymore.
No, it's transfer, huh?
Yeah, transfer duty changed July 1, 2019. So transfer duty, I'm just bringing it up now.
So with stamp duty, first home buyers don't really worry or care about it because if they're under 650, that it doesn't really apply to them. But where it actually really does apply is people that are transferring larger sums sort of properties. So I guess if people are selling between $1 and $2 million, there could be as much as 80 grand for the transfer. So it's just out of control, absolutely out of control. What I think you'll find is the government's got to look at this. The reason why it's got to look at it is when it was introduced, and I think it would have been as much as 30 or 40 years ago, when it was actually introduced, it was regulated to if super wealthy people were paying up towards 4%, entry-level people were paying towards 1% and 2%, and then mass market was sort of between 2% and 3%. Now, what actually happened when all those prices doubled and then doubled and doubled again, it actually pushed almost everybody in the marketplace to the highest threshold in the market in that percentile band. So what's actually happened is people are paying a small fortune of after-tax dollars. And when I say after-tax dollars, if you've got to pay 40 grand stamp duty on $1 million, you generally got to earn 60 or 70 grand after-tax money to pay that. It's just nuts.
It's huge. Like obviously when you said when it was introduced, it was sort of like obviously the value of the properties was a lot smaller. So it probably didn't really register as such a big figure. But as you said, the property prices now have doubled and doubled. And like stamp duty on some of the properties we're doing, it's 50, like I think on a couple we've done, which is a couple $100,000. It's people are actually now, I'm hearing it more and more coming up as like, oh, I'm going to buy this property because of the stamp duty costs. Where it wasn't really too much of a, well, it's always been a consideration, but now it's almost like stopping transactions happening. And it's a big cost when people are looking to buy and sell, where they may be downsizing. And one thing stopping them going, well, if we sell, we've got agent fees, we've got taxes here, and then we're buying, we've got stamp duty. It does stop people making a bit of transition, that sort of, what do we call it, transactional cost associated with it. I'll just bring it up here. So when is stamp duty payable? A lot of people, it's virtually payable on property. When you're selling buying a property, an investment property, vacant land, farming, commercial or industrial, or a business which includes land. I do get it quite often. A lot of people go, do I have to pay it on a commercial property or just land? When we're doing the land development in, well, we still are in Warriewood, Mark, I think one good benefit was when you're buying land, you don't pay it on the total value. So if you're buying a property for 1.5 million, you would pay stamp duty for 1.5. But if you're buying land and building for $500,000, you only pay it on that $1 million. So that is one way to sort of reduce that stamp duty cost there.
I guess effectively they were paying sort of 30% less stamp duty because, you know, the end product of what people were getting was a $1.5 million home, but they're paying stamp duty on a $1 million block of land. So that, you know, it's pretty clever. But don't forget the government's making back 10% on the building. There's GST in that on your building costs there, which the government's making good money on. So it would be like double dipping in a way. But mate, I think everyone's really got to get behind this because the way it's looking at the moment, if the government wants to promote property ownership and wants to promote people to buy, you know, they're going to freeze first home buyers because the first home buyer doesn't have an incentive to actually upsize. So they're doing all this wonderful stuff for first home buyers, but then they don't have a leg up, or it's just too expensive with stamp duty to move up to that next price range. So, you know, it's going to be, I think if government wants to encourage housing and transfer of housing, you know, I think what the government may even find is if they bring that stamp duty down, they could make more money because there's more people transacting. So there is a balance there. But at the moment, we're the highest tax state, and at the moment, people are really reluctant to sell or buy past the first home buyer bracket because it's just out of control. But what do people do about it? I think it's one of those things that where do you start? Which horse do you back if you want to have the government start reviewing this, or is it going to be something we're just stuck around forever?
And what do we want, sort of thing? Like, I know, should it be capped at X amount of dollars? Like, what's the difference between why? Like, it's almost like what's a property that's worth $1 million and property worth 10 million? Should they have the same stamp duty? Should it be once it gets to it? Should it still be a percentage method? Because I find for a system to still be in place that was implemented 40 years ago, as you said, it probably needs tweaks. There's probably not much that's around at the moment in systems, tweaks, procedures, which is 40 years old without a review. So even if it stays the same, but it has a review and they come to the same conclusion, I think just a fresh look at it. I know when they were talking with the election, I think, was it one of the parties were talking about a review, or I'm not sure. I just remember hearing a bit of it that it needs to be reviewed. What do you reckon what would you want to see? More of a review, or do you reckon a capped? Because obviously the New South Wales government's done really well from it. We're in a surplus, and that's highly because a lot of property transactions and a lot of stamp duty compared to other states which don't have as much property transactions or the value of properties like we do. So definitely the government's loving it.
Yeah, look, I'd like to see it just reset. The purpose of the brackets when stamp duty was introduced. So for anyone who doesn't know, and I'm probably repeating myself, but, 4% was for the ultra wealthy. And so it was over $1 million, but that over $1 million, 4% over $1 million was almost 38 or something years ago. So, the amount of people that are transacting 40 years ago, the amount of people that were transacting back then in that price range was just like juggernauts. Do you know what I mean? So the government
here it
was
is.
like,
Todd asked, I wonder how much. Yeah, well, sorry.
Yep.
Todd, I wonder how much the government makes from stamp duty. I just typed into Google while we're here. New South Wales stamp duty nets $13.8 billion, and some are calling for a reform of the tax. That was just last financial year. So that's huge. Who pays what? It reveals that buyers in Sydney are paying the lion's share of stamp duty, almost $7 billion in the 2016 to 17 financial review. So I'll put this link in the chat as well. You can have a look at that. That's huge. You would think
$14 billion.
with the amount of with that amount of money, we would have tunnels and bridges and spaceships getting us everywhere with infrastructure wise.
Yes, it is huge. And you know what? When you look at the, I think we were $40 billion in deficit as a New South Wales economy, or Australian economy even. So when you consider that $13 billion is stamp duty in New South Wales only, that can chip off a significant amount of our debt pretty quickly. I think we're up to about 20 billion now. We've been chipping away at it the last 5 years. I think, but very, very interesting, because they said I think in the next 2 years, our deficit will be back to zero. So that's probably an opportune time over the next year or two to be saying, look, we're going to review stamp duty. But back to what I was saying about the ultra wealthy over $1 million properties attracting the higher stamp duty rate, what the government should probably be doing is introducing the brackets and saying, okay, guys, these brackets that we've got, we want to not even reviewing the brackets, I should say, and they should be looking at the bracket saying, okay, well, it's not it's 4% over $5 million, because that's relative to when we put it in place 30, 40 years ago. And majority of people that are transacting, well, they're going to be, in between that sort of $1 to $3 million, $1 to $5 million. Well, they're going to be paying, 2.5% or 3%. And then the bottom bracket, we want to help out the people that are not first home buyers, but in between. So $0 to $1 million, then we probably want to be that 2%. Do you know what I mean? But just reviewing that bracket of pricing, because it's seriously out of date.
And I think what else is interesting with stamp duty, even with off the plan purchases, we should flag as well. So stamp duty is due 3 months after of exchange. So you may be looking to buy off the plan, which will be ready in 3 years. So you've got your 10% deposit, 5% deposit, you look to exchange. Within 3 months, you've got to pay the stamp duty on that transaction. I was reading, you can defer it. It does cost 9 cents a day. So we had a couple of people in a recent development we did in Brookvale where it was, but you got to be careful. So that was supposed to be completed in a year. That blew out 3 years. And I think the interest on that stamp duty, instead of being like $1,000, blew out to about $11,000 on that. So there are options out there as well. But I know, I think especially when financing is getting a lot trickier, people are looking for longer settlements, but just keep in mind stamp duty is due 3 months after. Otherwise, there's interest that accrues from that as well. Off the plan's always an interesting one with stamp duty. Remember, I know it was big when people would put and or nominee on a contract mark to try and resell it, because stamp duty was such a big factor. They were trying to find loopholes where they could encourage basically they would purchase the property and then on-sell it to somebody else before it would settle, but they'll just change the name from John to Sarah. But the government's pretty, you can tell how much they care about it when they clamp down on something, which would obviously generate stamp duty for them as well.
It's massive, but where we're going, how do people complain about it? How do we lobby against it? Where's the movement against it? Because it does need a review. It is unfair.
Yep.
And I know we are a fair country, and it's got to be looked at. I know John McGrath I saw doing it, which is sort of gave me the idea of talking about it this morning. He was lobbying it yesterday. He's on the bandwagon against it. There was a great story. I think it was in Sydney Morning Herald. Not sure where it was, but we've got to lobby this. We've got to get behind it, people. And us sitting on the sideline just saying, "Oh, it's terrible," is not going to help. But I think as an industry, for purchases and the massive it's not the industry, the masses, the buyers and the sellers and the people out there. They've got to really lobby against this. It's out of control.
100%. Even like what Todd says, even if you transfer a property with a family, you still have to pay stamp duty. It's like, it's pretty crazy, and especially in an area like that can be huge money where it's you, as you said, you buy like a house here, 1.5, like it's 60 grand, 70 grand just to put it in a family member's name. If the dynamics change, inheritance.
And again, that's after tax money. You know, that's 100 grand. That's almost 10% of the entire transaction is going to be going towards, you know, and when I say it's after tax money, we're paying tax on that money to pay the government that money.
Yeah.
Right. So
it's almost like you got to earn 3 times that to pay for it, sort of thing. It's not like a
double. That's it. You know, like it's 100 grand. It's 10% before tax. It's 100 money. It's 100 grand of your money to buy a home. And to buy a home for $1.5 million is not an expensive home in a lot of suburbs these days. Mm-hmm. I was even looking out near Windsor and places like that. Yesterday I was driving through there, and you know, 1.2, 1.3. You know, I can't remember what suburb it was that I was driving through there. But I'm thinking, oh my god, like, you know, to get into a basic home, it's over $1 million in a lot of suburbs in Sydney. That is out of control.
It does make Northern Beaches look like good value. I've done that before when you sort of look, oh, let's see how cheap it is, like 20 minutes that way, 20, 30 minutes that way. And you're like, it's the same price as the Northern Beaches and we're by the water. So
yeah, I can't remember where it was. It was sort of like I was going out to Wiseman's Ferry. I think it was Borkham Hills or something out through there.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking like far out. And the stamp duty these guys have to make, $100,000, then pay your tax, and you're left with $60,000, and then that's going to be a stamp duty net proceeds.
And it's
stamp
actually
duty is going to be that much, not tax deductible.
It's even more because they put it in your loan. So if you're paying 4%, 3% interest on that 50 grand of stamp duty, you're paying that off for over 20 years. So it's actually a lot more because normally, you know what I mean? So
you're borrowing money on it, and you know, at the end of the day, effectively, you are borrowing money on it. Because if you weren't paying it for stamp duty, you'd be paying it off your mortgage. So at the end of the day, you're going to pay a 3 or 5% freight on that stamp duty, because otherwise it'd be cut off, lumped onto your home loan, and you wouldn't be paying interest on it.
Well, if you're getting a loan for 5%, well, if stamp duty is 4%, you're buying a property for 700 grand, you could almost buy a second investment if you didn't have to pay stamp duty. That's how big the figure is. People are borrowing more money to pay the stamp duty. It has counterproductive. Banks are getting more. 100%. It's almost like there's your loan, but we're giving you a little bit more than we should because it's stamp duty, but that's okay because that's going to the government, that figure as well. Yep. So, yeah, I think a good review. How does it start? It starts with this, people talking about it, forums like this. Social media is probably a big part as well. So this will be the start of the movement. Like and share it. Millions will view.
Yeah, big time. But look, guys, we're going to find a link to there must be a community of some sort, I'd imagine, or on Facebook. You know, look, maybe there's a group on Facebook for review of stamp duty or stamp duty sucks group.
Yeah, stamp duty review 2019. I'm just Googling it as we're on the phone now.
Maybe we should start an activist group against it.
Yeah. Where is it? Transfer. Well, remember, Mark, the name changed. It's transfer duty now.
Transfer duty. Yeah.
Massive change.
Tax. And then there's land tax and there's all these other stuff.
Yeah. Oh, I think when we said this morning going, let's talk about stamp duty, land tax, capital gains tax, we're like, fuck, there's a week's worth of talks just about taxes and charges along with property transactions. So it's pretty big. The chain reaction of costs associated with buying, selling a property as well, which becomes more relevant when we're not going up 10%, 20% a year. It's like when times are tough, that's when you're looking at your outgoings and your expenses and the real cost of owning a property. So
well said.
this is when you've got to look at it. I know we've got we can even talk about just with that land tax mark between buying a home and maybe buying strata. There's different views on that in times where there's less capital growth in the market. So that's a big topic in itself. We need to minimize, and that was that Kerry Packer saying about minimizing your tax or something.
Yeah, everyone minimises their tax, otherwise they got rocks in their head. But look, the big one today. Is there anything else you want to cover? Any viewers got any comments or questions there, Michael? Guys,
I appreciate the interaction. Todd, Margaret, good morning. Always love having you guys on. Keep in mind, anything you want us to talk about, discuss, shoot it through like a lot of people did this week. It's been really good. It's great. Income tax on rent. That's a good one from Jeff.
Yeah, look, I think the big one is that we really have to, and what we're talking about this morning, if you've just tuned in, is stamp duty, how it's a little bit out of control at the moment. It's hitting everyone at the maximum tax rate. The government's generating almost $14 billion a year out of New South Wales alone, I believe.
I think it's 14 billion total. I'll put the link in the chat so everyone can have a look at that article.
Have a look at that as a country. So, it was, and if we design this correctly, it would encourage more property purchasing for people, people to upsize hopefully more, transact a little bit more. Don't get me wrong, I like stamp duty.
Yeah.
It's because it's one of those things that gels people into, makes them have a good, long, hard thing, and it gels them into that transaction hard. So people because it's a lot of stamp duty, but not that much stamp duty. Do you know what I mean? I'm not whinging that we shouldn't be paying stamp duty. I just think it's just hitting too many people at the maximum threshold now.
Yeah, perfect. All right. Well, I think today looks like, I thought it was going to be a hot one, but it looks like we've got some grey clouds, which mean all the serious buyers come out in the wet weather. Anything else you want to add, Mark, or we get stuck into our Saturday?
No, buddy. Have a great weekend, everyone. All right, man. Take care. Hopefully, guys, it was interesting chat.
Yeah, more Novak Breakfast will be live soon. Wait, Mark.
Yeah, I will be. Yeah.
All right, cool. Thanks, guys. Bye.